Hi, good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of our Justice and Pieces guest speaker series. Today, we are joined by Piper, who's going to tell us all about her practice as well as the work she's doing with Off the Tracks podcast and as an Ontario bar exam coach. So, thank you so much, Piper, for joining us. And perhaps maybe you can start by telling us a little bit about yourself, how you got into law, and what you're up to today.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me, JP. What a fun way to kick off my evening today on this random December Wednesday. I'm Piper, and I am a Jewish white settler. I live on Treaty 1 land here in Winnipeg, Manitoba. I went to law school in Ontario, and I did my undergrad in a small town with one traffic light in New Brunswick. So I definitely moved around a lot during my formal post-secondary education and spent summers living in different cities for different jobs. And I really believe, I think I'm paraphrasing a Steve Jobs quote that my grandma has always said to me, but life is all about connecting the dots. And that's something I really try and think about. Looking back and looking forward is how can I connect the dots to get to my next destination? And we're all a sum of our experiences. And so I think without some of the setbacks and successes I've had, I wouldn't get to experience the ups and downs and joys of everyday life. So I currently wear many hats, and this I would say has definitely been a theme throughout my life. I currently work for an organization called Kiwatnuk Inihu Miniwewin, which in Cree means Northern People's Wellness. And so we are a transformative health entity seeking to improve outcomes for First Nations people. So the work I do really combines my interests and love of policy, law, governance, human rights, and I work within a team to improve health outcomes for Indigenous people, specifically by removing racist barriers. So in Canada and in Manitoba, especially Northern Manitoba, which is the population our organization works to represent, there is a lot of racism everywhere and in the healthcare system, specifically anti-Indigenous racism. And so that is the work I do in my day-to-day full-time work. And then outside of my formal workplace, I founded Ontario Bar Exam Coach, formally in September 2020, though I had been doing it a little bit beforehand and maybe didn't even realize it. When I graduated the University of Windsor Law in June 2019, or May 2019, I wrote the bar exams, the Ontario bar exams in June 2019. And I was woefully naive and underprepared, and I failed both exams. And that was really crushing. It was especially crushing to find out on my third day of articling. And I studied and rewrote both while I was articling. And when I did that, I really had to change my approach. And I also had to dramatically overhaul my time management capabilities. And it was really awful. Like the whole process was awful, even before failing. Like the bar exam was just awful. And I wholeheartedly believe that there shouldn't be a bar exam, and other provinces have a licensing process that is far more equitable than Ontario. And I believe that the barrister and solicitor exams really gatekeep the profession for a lot of people who have so much to offer, but for one reason or another really struggle with these exams. But all of this to say is my experience rewriting the bar exams was really challenging, especially while articling. And then part of it was at the start of the pandemic. And after I passed the exams, I shared a blog post, which is something I had never done before. I had never blogged or anything like that. And I just really wanted to release a lot of the shame and embarrassment I had felt about failing the bar exam. And I thought, there are so many people in my life that I haven't told this about because I didn't want like inquiring minds. I wanted to sort of go through the process again without having to really deal with all of that. And so when I did share this blog post in August 2020, it really took off in a way that I was not expecting. I had been so scared to hit send. I was really concerned about what the reaction was going to be. And the next thing I knew, my email, my LinkedIn, my Twitter, everything was blowing up. It was people who had been or were in the exact same situation of failing the bar exams who all wanted to talk. And I was more than happy to talk because at the time I was waiting to be called to the bar because I'd only found out I'd passed the exams a couple of days prior and I was unemployed. And so I spent many days just talking to people about my experience. And then a family member said to me, I think you're really onto something here because it seems to be working. And so I launched my business, not really knowing what to expect in September 2020. And I thought, I can offer people strategy coaching for these exams because really, like, a lot of times people don't realize that the bar exam is a search and find exercise and it's all about knowing where to go. But at the same time, it's really daunting because you're handed over 2,000 pages of material and told to go. And I really try and work with people to develop effective and efficient strategies for really good studying strategies, but then strategies that also translate onto effective exam writing skills on the day of. I really wasn't expecting anything when I pressed send on launching this business. And then in my first year of business, I worked one-on-one with over 150 clients. And my business has really grown in a way that has been both exciting and vastly overwhelming for one person, also working a full-time job. But I am so grateful to connect with these licensing candidates because my goal is to build a really positive working relationship, because I know that when I was writing the exams, whether for the first time or the second time, and some people come to me and they have been unsuccessful for multiple attempts, it's really lonely. And I really work hard to be that person in their corner that they can come to when they're having trouble in their prep, and just support them in whatever they need throughout their licensing journey. So that's all of that. And outside of coaching and outside of my full-time job, I also work at a spin studio, which is just a fun thing I love doing. It started as something when I was trying to figure out what my next legal role would be after getting called to the bar. I don't teach spin classes. I am on the people team. So I am the person welcoming you and having a great time and cheering you on. Pardon me. But outside of spin, I also run a podcast with my dear friend and often regular collaborator, Erin O'Rourke, who is a sole practitioner. She runs her own law firm, Erin O'Rourke Law, and she is just such a badass who started her own law firm pretty much the second after she finished articling, and has been really successful in that. And it's been super cool to watch her business grow. When Erin and I were at Windsor Law together, we were the co-coordinators of Windsor Law's Pro Bono Students Canada chapter, and that's actually how we became friends. And as our articles were winding up, it was May 2020, and both of us didn't really know what we were doing next. I was still studying for the solicitor exam. She had just found out that there wasn't going to be a position for her to be hired back at her firm. And we thought, what does life look like for people in the legal profession who don't aspire to necessarily making partner at a big firm or a smaller mid-sized firm? And I think that was something that we felt was really pushed in conversations we had in law school and in the legal profession at large was, okay, you go to law school, you get an associate job, you article, you get an associate job, you become partner. And we just thought, but what if we want to reject the idea of that? So we had sat on this idea for a podcast since May or end of April 2020, and we finally launched it in February 2021, Off the Tracks podcast. And the question that we really seek to answer is, what does it look like to do law differently? So what does it look like to practice law or not? What does it look like to have a law degree or be in the legal profession and kind of march to the beat of your own drum, to go off the tracks, if you will? So that's a little bit about kind of what I do on the day to day. And I think something that I really try and practice is really just like trying to find joy in this profession and in life. I think life can be really stressful. And I think just like trying to find the things that make you happy and set your soul on fire is really like what wakes me up in the morning. So yeah, thank you for having me, JT. I'm so excited.
Perfect, Piper. It's nice, obviously, I think, even when the few times I've been on the other side, to be on the other side and answering the questions instead of asking the questions. So a lot in there. So let's kind of go back from the beginning and try to work our way through everything you've shared there. And let's start with what you're doing there for providing the assistance there for the First Nations people in Winnipeg there. And then maybe tell us how you kind of got in. I know you were sharing about going to jump around from coast to coast to coast here in Canada. What ended up drawing you there, and what was that transition like? And I don't know if you've been to Winnipeg before, but in terms of setting up shop there, and tell us maybe a bit more of what you're doing and the impact that you're having there in the community.
Okay, yeah, thank you. So I think I promise I'll answer your question, but I'm originally from Winnipeg and I grew up here. And when I was in the 12th grade, and it's always weird to take things back to high school when you're an adult professional now, but bear with me, I promise this is going somewhere. When I was in the 12th grade, I applied for a scholarship, and this scholarship is called the Loran Scholarship. And it's an undergraduate scholarship, an entrance scholarship, and it's tenable at only certain universities. It's a full ride scholarship to certain universities in Canada. And I applied for the scholarship. I personally thought I was a great candidate. And as an excited 17-year-old, I couldn't get off the website. And I kept looking at all the different schools you could use it at. And I went to a high school in Winnipeg called the University of Winnipeg Collegiate. So my high school was in the University of Winnipeg. So going to the University of Winnipeg didn't really interest me because I'd already been there for 4 years. And going to the University of Manitoba was far away. And in Winnipeg, far away means like 20 minutes. So that also didn't really interest me. So I decided, I was looking at universities on this award website, and I found one called Mount Allison University in Sackville, New Brunswick. And even after I didn't win the award, nor was I shortlisted or anything like that, I never got off the Mount Allison website. And it was really never in the plan for me to go away to school. But it was a happy accident. And I was really grateful to be in a position where I got a scholarship and my family and I made it work. But all of that to say, the reason I love this story is because I didn't get the scholarship. And it just shows, like, by putting your name forward for something, you never know how it can change your life. So whether it's a job that you don't get, but then someone thinks of you again, like a couple years later, or they connect you to a different organization, I think that it's always really important to put your name in the hat if it interests you, because you never know what will happen. So if I had never applied for that scholarship, I probably never would have left Winnipeg, but I did. And I went to Mount Allison, and I had a really positive experience at that university. I majored in sociology and Canadian studies, and my undergraduate research looked at the intersections of Manitoba's child welfare system and the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls crisis in this country. And the reason I was interested in that was because I grew up near downtown Winnipeg, and I went to high school in downtown Winnipeg, and Winnipeg has Canada's largest urban Indigenous population. And the issues facing that community are really at the forefront of the social consciousness here. And it was something that I'd always been very aware of. And when I went to school on the East Coast, I realized that it wasn't something people in my circle knew a lot about. And that sort of bothered me. So it made me want to study that area even more. And when I was applying to law schools, I also applied to master's programs. And one of the reasons I was interested in attending Windsor Law was because they were just building a new Indigenous law a new cohort of faculty to teach Indigenous legal traditions and Indigenous law courses. And that was really attractive to me because I knew it was something that was really important to me to study. So I went to Windsor, and it was a really great experience back when you could easily cross a border pre-pandemic. It was awesome to be able to go to Detroit all the time. And Windsor itself is a really cute city. And I had a really positive experience at Windsor Law, and really positive experience in different Indigenous law courses, and the Kwishkman Indigenous Moot, which is an Indigenous law moot that takes place every year at a different university. And all of this led me to working at Kiiwetinoong Ininium Wewin here in Manitoba. And I'm really grateful it did. It was always, when I moved away for school, at 18, I was very eager to get out of Winnipeg. Winnipeg has a really bad rap. And as I got older, all I wanted was to move back to Winnipeg. It's kind of like, you don't know what you've got until it's gone. And also I'm really close to both of my grandmothers. And when I finished articling, even prior to articling, like while I was articling, I knew I wanted to move back after articling, regardless of the outcome of any job offer, anything like that, because I knew I wanted to spend time with my grandparents and put down more roots back here for the time being. I always say that while my heart will always be here in Winnipeg, I am always curious and willing to move at a moment's notice, probably almost to my detriment. And I always say I'd move again for the right cool opportunity, the next cool thing. So I'm here now, and I'm really happy and really excited, but don't ask me tomorrow. We're supposed to have a brutal snowstorm overnight. So I'm glad we're doing this today. But yeah, that's kind of how I ended up full circle where I am now.
Yeah, I was just going to say it's full circle and back to Winnipeg there. And actually, not to make you jealous, but I think tomorrow in Toronto, it's going to be 16 degrees, which
Oh
is
my gosh.
random for December the 16th, I think there. But
That's wild.
so maybe tell us a little bit more about what sort of the day-to-day is in terms of work. And for those, again, I mean, similar to what you're doing with Off the Tracks here, I mean, I think it's great to hear different perspectives, different areas of law, so that you get more of, well, there's more beyond in Ontario Bay Street and the corporate jobs. And I think it's something unique. I don't think we've had anyone before kind of talking about something in that sphere, but maybe you can tell us a bit more of sort of what you do on a day-to-day, and how you kind of bring all of your past experiences, whether from undergrad there at Mount Allison and all the way through to law school and to what you're doing now.
Yeah, absolutely. So the organization I work for is a non-share corporation, and they were established in January 2020, so very new. And in fact, we're having our first ever AGM next week on Monday and Tuesday. So we are a fresh organization, if you will. And we're a team of about 14, I believe. So a very small team. And until today, actually, we just had someone new start today. Until today, I was the only practicing lawyer. The other lawyer that they've just brought on is in a non-legal role, but a lot of the work I do combines some legal advice, legal research, policy, and exploring like governance type work. I advise on different human rights issues, and I work with people who have experienced harm in the healthcare system. So people who have been discriminated against, didn't receive the care at the standard of care they should have. And our organization is new, and we're working to establish better systems and better processes to improve these health outcomes for Northern First Nations people. It's really interesting because our organization is small, and so we're really collaborative. So while I am a lawyer, the day-to-day is all very different, and I wear many hats depending on the day. It's very much a where can I pitch in today kind of organization. And it's really cool. I work with a lot of different doctors and people who have a lot of experience working for government, and people who are policy analysts and health advisors. And it's really neat to learn more about how all of these professions intersect. And what's also really cool is almost all of the people I work with had very nonlinear careers. And I just love that. We are all like a collection of our experiences, like I was saying earlier. And it's just so neat to learn from people who have had all of these different iterations of their career, especially as I'm at the beginning of mine.
Perfect. And so I just see a question about maybe talk more about the bar exam coaching. And I think it's really admirable. You sort of put all that out there. I mean, I think a lot of people, as probably the people that reached out to you, felt afraid. What if I have out there on LinkedIn or something that, hey, I didn't pass the bar exams, and someone's going to say, well, why Piper? No, she failed her exams. And I mean, it's something. It's great whenever I have people sharing stories of their success, but it's also great when people are sharing those mistakes and setbacks, because there's so many other people going through it that they need someone to kind of reach out to for advice, and they don't know who to turn to because they don't know who's out there that's gone through that. So now in terms of your coaching, what can you share in terms of strategies there? I mean, I have paralegal students who, for example, would write the paralegal licensing exams. In terms of what you learned from the 2 times going through it, and what was different the second time, I'm sure what you share with your students, right, in terms of how to better prepare for open book multiple choice licensing exam. So I know there's a lot in there, but pick wherever you want to go with. And
I'm thrilled to talk about it. I think for me, one of the things is with the bar exam, and please let me know if it's like this or not like this for the paralegal licensing exam, but with the Ontario bar exams, there's so much information. And I don't mean that just in the traditional sense of all of the information that's on the exam. I mean, there's so much information about the bar exams online. And that is both a blessing and a curse. I like to call it like the toxicity of too much information, is what I talk about with my clients. I remember when I had just finished law school and started to study in the before times with my friends at the library, and everyone I knew, whether or not they knew lawyers, were getting different Google Drives sent to them, different emails sent to them, full of information about the bar exam from their best friend's sister's cousin's ex-boyfriend who works at this fancy firm. And it was just like the next thing you knew, you had all of these Google Drives and old practice tests, some of them from like 20 years ago. And you were in Facebook groups about the bar exam, and you were reading tweets and blogs and watching YouTube videos and on LinkedIn. And it was just like all of this information about the bar exam. And it was so overwhelming. And everywhere you look, someone was saying, do it this way, do it this way. This is how you should study. This is how I pass. This is how you're going to pass. And when I first wrote the exams, I really subscribed to all of that. I just thought I need everything. Like if I don't look at this and I don't read this, I'm not gonna be successful. And what that turned into was me not actually finishing reading the materials, which ended up not being the right plan. So when it came to rewriting the exams, I reread, I put that in quotes because I hadn't read all the materials the first time, but I reread the materials, and I realized that all that mattered was my prep and what was going to work best for me. So when I work with clients, I really hone in on like what's worked for you in the past. Now is not the time to rewrite the wheel. What are the things that help you when you're studying? What are the things that help you be successful? And how can we tune out the noise? There's so much noise about this exam out there online. How can we kind of minimize that and maximize what you're doing in your study sessions each day? With that being said, I really think too, with this exam, because there's so much physical information you get from the LSO, like materials to read, it can be really daunting, and it is really daunting. And people think, okay, I just need to get through these materials. And if I get through these materials, I'll be good, or I'll figure it out. And what I've seen more often than not, whether in my experience or in the experience of working with different people, is that reading the materials and flying through them and getting it done and doing the quote 50 pages a day that you quote need to do is not something I tend to recommend. And the reason for that is if you're flying through it just for the sake of getting it done, you're gonna put yourself in a pretty challenging situation where you've finished reading the materials, but you don't have a plan. And so I really work with people to develop a plan on like how to use those materials, how to actually make the most of their time when they're reading those materials, how to feel like they've actually accomplished something by the time they reach the end of reading, and how they can translate what they've read and done while reading into success on the exam. And so it's really about like developing a plan throughout your studying, instead of just reading and then coming up with a plan in the couple weeks before the exam that you might have once you're done reading the materials.
And in terms of all of that success, all of the students that kind of came on board over the last year and a half, I mean, it must be a tremendous feeling when they come back to you and say, Piper, hey, guess what? I passed the licensing exam. So what have you learned from kind of doing this now for just over a year in terms of preparation there, and about anything further you could add in terms of advice for students going through, and paralegal students similar, there's like 800 or so pages. I think they just have to do one exam as opposed to the barrister and solicitor exam. So there's that difference, but more or less the same format. So anything you can share in terms of, getting through, or even just the anxiety of testing. Now, I don't know if back when you wrote it, it was still in person versus now it being online. Is that sort of different in terms of preparation and
Yeah.
that test anxiety?
So, no, that's a great question. So, I wrote 3 of 4 of my bar exam rights in person. And then I was scheduled to write the solicitor exam for the second time on March 17th, 2020. And on March 13th, 2020, the exam was canceled indefinitely. So I rewrote my solicitor exam in June of 2020 online. And I was in the first cohort of people to do that, which added so much test anxiety because no one had done it before. And so there was nothing online. Like at that point, I wanted the toxicity of too much information of what it would be like to write it online, but there was quite literally no one to ask and no resource to turn to. So yes, with that being said, so many of the people I work with, in fact, I would go as far to say all of the people I work with experience test anxiety in one way or another, related to these exams. And I think it's because, one, there's so much depending on the success of these exams, getting called to the bar, and 2, very few people begin studying for this exam from a place of abundance. And what I mean by that is when you start studying for these exams, a lot of the time you're pretty burnt out. Whether you're an NCA student who has done 5 or 7 NCA exams and possibly an LLM and is probably working part-time or full-time, and then you come to study for these exams, or whether you're a student who has just graduated law school here in Canada, or whether you're someone who's finished your articles and has waited until the end of your articles to start the exam process. No one is coming into these exams well rested, without a lot of stress or responsibility. And so I think as well, something I really try to inject into my coaching is like the human element of merging these exams with your existing life and figuring out how to not only manage the stress of an exam day, but the stress of this whole process. I often have one client on my lunch almost every day. And earlier today, I had a client over the course of my lunch break, one of the joys of working remotely. And it was my first session with this client, and they are writing one of their bar exams after previously being unsuccessful. They're writing one of their bar exams in March. And I said to this person who is obviously feeling pretty distraught and frustrated with the process, I said, look, the exam's in 3 months, pretty much 3 months from the day. And I said, these 3 months are going to suck. There's literally no other way that I can say that. I wish I could make it better. But my goal is to make it more manageable. And my goal is to make it suck slightly less. And that's just kind of the fact of the matter. I think when it comes to day of test anxiety, I know that's something that I struggled with as well. It's something that I really tried to implement on the day of the exam was one question is not make or break. So when I was pretty confident I got a question wrong or really couldn't find the answer, or just frankly, I joke to some of my clients sometimes, like, you're going to come across probably at least 5 questions on the exam where you don't understand a single word in the question other than like and the. And we all have questions that we come across like that. And so what I tried to tell myself was, you just have to keep going, like always forward, never backwards. So I really tried to say, okay, this is not my question. Let me go find one that is. Let me just keep going. And so I think like on any exam, especially an exam like the bar exams or the paralegal licensing exam, remembering knowing when to move on, knowing when to keep moving forward, keep plowing forward, and not letting yourself get down when you encounter a couple hard questions. Because if you really try and maintain like an I've got this mindset, you'll probably have an outcome that allows you to keep moving forward instead of possibly falling apart in the middle of the exam.
Did you find like being in the comforts of your own home versus being in, in the, well, I'm not sure exactly where it would have been for you, but where there's all these other people writing, and I don't know if you had the same like airport security, like
Oh yeah.
screening with the plastic bags and everything that I think just further, fuels those nerves there. But what did you find? I mean, did it feel any different because of that? Or was it sort of a different kind of anxiety because of that?
Yeah, so I wrote my first 2 in-person exams in Windsor at like an Italian cultural center, and then I wrote one of my rewrites in Etobicoke at a convention center. That was obviously really stressful. There's so much stress in the room, and there's the distraction of your peers around you writing the exam. What I will say is while there are pros to writing at home, and I'm very pro work from home, I do feel like there's a lot of inequities to writing the bar exam at home, especially in terms of the really, frankly, strange rules that are imposed on candidates. And the rule I think that bothers me the most and bothers the people I work with the most is you're not allowed to have anything on the walls in the room that you write it. So if you have pictures, or if you have a clock, or if you have like anything on the wall, it has to come down or be covered with a sheet. And if you live in a multi-generational home, or you live with roommates, or whatever it might be, for a lot of people, that's a huge inconvenience, and can also be really stressful on the day of the exam if they haven't covered up their wall things well enough. I think the writing online definitely like has a lot of perks in terms of accessibility for people who maybe can't get to a testing center or whatever it might be. Both have pros and cons, but in short, between friends, JP, I just really think there shouldn't be a bar exam.
So let's follow up on that. What could, like, I mean, other provinces do things differently.
Yeah.
So maybe you can share kind of what could be a model there. I know as well in Ontario, about articling, and I think there's like a call out to whether there should be minimum wage implemented for those in articling. I mean, we're talking about inequities here. I mean, there's another aspect to it, but what else can we do in terms of avoiding sort of the exam itself?
Totally. So I think to start off, first of all, just as an aside, there should 100% no questions asked be a minimum wage for articling. The fact that articling students in Ontario are excluded from the ESA is just beyond abhorrent. And the conditions that people work in sometimes are really awful. But related to the bar exam, first of all, it's financially inaccessible. It's the last time I checked, I think it's $678 a time per exam, plus tax, plus fees. and whatnot. You pay just under $200 for the materials. And then obviously you're paying your licensing fees at the same time. For most people, it's around, I don't know the exact number, but I think when I was in the licensing process 2.5 years ago, it was like about $5,000 to write the bar exams once each, to article, and to get the bar exam materials. And then if you fail, it's like another nearly $700 per exam. That in and of itself is completely inaccessible. I remember it being April of my last year of law school, and I paid for law school through a professional line of credit through a bank. And when I found out that I had to pay the law society $5,000 ASAP, I remember crying in my bedroom. And I don't mean to say it so dramatically, but I think at that point, like I said before, nobody starts this process from a place of abundance. And I was burnt out from law school. I was out of cash, and it was just another stressor. When it comes, and I see that all the time with my clients and the people I work with, that is not a unique experience, the one I had. In fact, many people I work with face other challenges as well when it comes to accessing the licensing process. But when it comes to establishing a better way, hands-on training, like different, I think in some provinces it's called like CPLED, or like different courses that are mandated and you're given time off of articling to take. Each province does it differently, whether in-person classes or self-guided learning, different modules. I think like that would be awesome. I didn't know how to draft a statement of claim for writing the bar exam. I knew it from my articling, but I wish I'd known it prior to articling through like some hands-on training. And I really think that hands-on training done in a pass-fail way, with time given to do the training, is really important. With all of that being said, there also, when I'm saying this out loud, I'm thinking to myself, okay, time off from articling to do the training. That means people probably aren't getting paid. That creates an issue. I'm not going to solve all of this today here on Justice in Pieces, but all of that to say is I think people should be paid fairly, especially people who for many are graduating with 6 figures of student debt. I think people should receive hands-on training, and I think that we should abolish the bar exams.
All great points there, and something that I think over the next while, the Law Society of Ontario is going to be looking at, giving a hard look at what makes the most sense in terms of reducing those costs and burdens and barriers. Because I mean, especially at least with the consultations that they're looking at for minimum wages there for articling. I mean, how do you go after finishing law school and you're running up 6-figure debts, as you said, and then expect to making it work even with a minimum wage? What are you going to do with that? And if you're living in cities like Toronto, I mean, where can you even live on top of all of the stuff that you have to take care of? Now let's switch gears. Maybe I'll try to cover the last piece here, and I think you're also in a very similar position that I'm in here. I mean, you listen to all of the different stories, all of the different guests you and Aaron have had on off the tracks there. Maybe you could tell us a little bit more about where, when you finally started, how it's been going. What have you learned? I mean, I think there's all these unique stories, and I know some of our guests have been the same. Full disclaimer, I did hear one of your episodes. I'm like, I definitely need to bring Tuba on and just connect with her. And like days later, she was on. So it worked out really well. We were laughing about how quickly there was a turnaround there. But how did that all come about? And what have you learned from being on the other side and you are today about all these great stories?
Well, it's so funny. After we got off this live stream here, Aaron and I are going to record an episode with a guest for our first episode for 2022. So we're really excited to kind of have some wiggle room and have an episode to launch the season with. So I'll be switching gears as soon as we get off this. Yeah, it's so fun. And I think when you're able to like explore and be curious about the world and other people's experiences, it really opens your eyes to lots of different possibilities. I think that I have learned that there isn't one right way to practice law or be a lawyer or not be a lawyer. And I've also learned through my own experience and through listening to the people that we've had on the show that it's really scary sometimes to do things differently and to not follow the straight and narrow path that sometimes prescribed to us. Um, it's really inspiring to hear the stories of different people, and the podcast has covered a lot of different issues, whether that's been law school debt and how people have managed that, or people who have switched careers, so people who either became lawyers after a full career in a different field, or people who were lawyers and completely did a 180 to a different career. We've covered issues related to mental health and related to sexual assault and related to all sorts of really important things. I think for us, Erin and I are really committed to being really vulnerable on the podcast. And we really kind of nurture the same for our guests, because I think sometimes like in the legal profession, we are expected to be like a one-dimensional advocate who just advocates for their clients and doesn't show anything else, because it might make them appear weak or someone that maybe you wouldn't want in your corner if someone shows even a single slight flaw or misstep or anything challenging in their life. And Erin and I really try and show that some of the most successful people you know or don't know have had like a lot of different missteps or have been really burnt out or have struggled with lots of different things. And we're really committed to discussing that. The other thing that I love about the podcast is that I got to hang out with one of my closest friends a lot. And it's a really cool way to like collaborate on something with someone you care about so much. And I think why I don't want to speak for Erin, but I think one of the reasons we love working together so much is because we always want to see each other win. And I think that's so important to have people in your corner that really like lift you up, whether that's in business or in your personal relationships or in like your personal goals or professional goals. Like Erin and I really help each other in every way we can. We have what we call like power hours often, where we'll like get together and she'll answer some challenging business emails she's been putting off. I'll answer some things. We'll do some podcast work, and we just try and get as much done as we can. And then we gab and catch up afterwards. And it's really nice to just to share that experience with her and to get to meet really cool people along the way.
Yeah, and that's great. And it's certainly, it is very rewarding for everyone, right? That you get to hear those stories, you get to share those stories, and you learn so much. And I think you touched on this earlier in the podcast here with respect to when you go to law school. You literally walk into buildings that are named after big law firms, and you have sort of this sort of predestination that's sort of where the train is going. And are you on, are you on and going in that direction as well? And then when you find out the numbers, and I think it's after law school when I finally found out the numbers of the students who end up going into big law, into those big firms, and I'm like, really that much? Because it seemed like it was like 95%, and I was part of that 5% that wasn't. And then when you hear all these stories of people who go into different directions, and as you say, they're really vulnerable, right? Because it's non-traditional, and you don't really have people to turn to as much as those who have gone and they did a 2L summer position, they articled there, or then they got hired back, and now they're second year, third year, fifth year partner, senior partner, right? I mean, there's always someone sort of in that train there that's in the car in front of you, right? So it's great when we hear more of those stories, because I think it inspires that next generation that there are people to go out and seek out. So it's excellent. I'm glad there's so much over the pandemic, especially we're seeing a lot more content there, legal content. So it's great that you're both doing that. And again, I think tremendous there for students and lawyers and paralegals and practitioners alike to kind of hear some of these stories.
No, thank you so much. And I think too, like one thing Erin and I love is we love having people on the show who I feel like sometimes in like the legal profession, especially in Ontario right now, a lot of like you always see the same great people on different shows and different podcasts and blogging, and they're doing great work. And I read and consume all of that content. Something Erin and I love when it's your own show, which I'm sure that you experience as well. You get to choose who's on the show. Erin and I obviously curate the content, and so what's cool is like we love having people come on the podcast who are from smaller cities or who don't maybe have a big personal brand, because you don't need one in life to be successful. And some of our most listened episodes are from people who have never worked at a big firm, who just have really, really interesting stories that people relate to. And I think if anyone is like listening to this right now and is thinking like, I haven't, like, I've never listened to Off the Tracks, like, I don't know where to start. Every episode, I mean, I'm biased, but we think every episode is great. But a couple really standout episodes happened more recently in our Second Life series. So that's where we interviewed people who have had different careers throughout their lives. And the very first episode of the series is with a woman named Michelle Thompson. And she now works at a nonprofit. She was previously a lawyer. She articled at a very impressive, hard to get a position at labor law firm. And she talks about like after articling, how she just felt so lost and she had no clue what she was going to do, and the weight of student debt and all those things. And we have never received as many messages as we did after that episode, because I think similar to when I shared the blog post about failing the bar exam, our podcast really tries to talk about things that people are maybe thinking about but have been scared to admit. And it's really nice to kind of have that safe space in the profession to build on that a bit.
Yeah, and one of the things there, I mean, that we talk about here and that we've touched on as well before here is about taking care of your own mental health and taking care of, making sure that before you can go and help clients or in your profession that you're well grounded. Anything you can share from your own experiences or from experiences of listening with others there that you can pass along to students and anyone listening about how to make all of that work in a profession that there is a lot of burnout and a lot of stress and anxiety and addiction, and taking care of your mental health. Anything that you can kind of share with us that you found very useful?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I had it all figured out. And I think sometimes we pretend we do. And I definitely don't have anything all figured out. Ask anyone close to me. I really don't. And I keep wondering, like, at what point do you figure it all out in life? And people tell me, like, never. And that's a horrifying thought. So I hope they're lying, but I just have to keep living each day to find out. I have a very cliche answer. But it comes from a non-cliche place. So I take care of my mental health by working out. But it started from a really negative place. So in my first year of law school, I gained 80 pounds. I was really, really miserable. I had a really challenging adjustment to law school for many different reasons. And that turned into some bad habits as my mental health suffered, and a bad relationship with food. And after my first year of law school, I was fortunate that I was in a position where my family welcomed me home that summer. I hadn't been home to Winnipeg for the summer in a long time, and I came home for the summer, and I spent the summer losing the weight. And when I came back to law school, I felt like a new person. And it wasn't the weight loss that made me feel like a new person. It was like the new state of mind. And it was that I deserved to take care of myself in a way that was important to me. And as my relationship with exercise and food has evolved, at the time I wasn't, but I'm now like very anti-diet and just very pro like working out for my mental health. So like I said, I work at a spin studio. I go spin most days at like 6 a.m. And that's like kind of my me time. it's very weird to be in a club like atmosphere at 6 a.m. most days. And when I'm not at the spin studio, I am going to a boot camp or to a Pilates class, or I'm doing a workout in my living room. And that is more about just like giving my mind a chance to turn off. I don't like going to the gym by myself because then I need to plan the workout. And there's so many things in my life that I need to plan otherwise that I need someone to plan the workout for me. So I would say that's the main way I take care of my mental health. And also just really, I'm really grateful to like have a really great circle of friends, some of whom are lawyers, some of whom I met in law school, and to be able to commiserate and share joys with has been really positive as well.
Yeah, I mean, how do you find all the time for all the different things there, right? I mean, what do you?
That's a great question. I think that I've learned recently that it's great to wake up with a to-do list and a plan. Pardon me. But I've recognized that sometimes everything you wanted to accomplish in a day doesn't get done. And I had a couple things I needed to do yesterday outside of my full-time job that didn't get done. Tuesdays are always my busiest day of the week. I wake up, I go to the gym. Aaron and I launch a podcast episode. I have a work meeting bright and early at 9 a.m. Every Tuesday, and then I work all day. And then after work from 5 to 9:30 at night, I go work at the spin studio. And so Tuesdays are like my heaviest day of the week by far. And I think just like having food in the house and having a plan and recognizing that some days you just don't get everything done that you wanted to do, and to let go of that guilt, which I haven't perfected, but I'm working on, have been a way for me to kind of get as much done as I can each day.
Perfect. So Piper, thank you so much for taking the time here and joining us and sharing all of that. And we were able to cover everything there that we talked about at the top of the hour here. So I was wondering if you have any final words of wisdom for anyone listening, and as well, maybe you can share where they can access all of the different things that you're involved with and online. And thanks so much again, Piper, for joining us.
JP, thank you so much for inviting me. It's been such a joy to quote be on the other side for this show. And it's been so fun to chat. I was so nervous to come on here and have this conversation with you, but it's been such a blast. I think something for me that I think is really important for people to remember, and something I really try and preach, is your path doesn't have to look like anybody else's. And your goals and your wants for your life, whether that's your career or otherwise, don't have to mirror or emulate anyone else's other than like your core values. And I think something that I've struggled with in the past, and I'm realizing is really important, is to listen to your deep inner knowing. Sometimes you'll ask yourself, what do I want to be doing next? What's important to me? And if you really look internally, you'll most of the time find the answer. And so to really trust yourself, and to trust that you know yourself best, is really important when navigating your life and your career. And I'm still learning, but that's been really helpful in guiding me forward at the beginning of my career. Like I said, thank you so much for having me. If anyone wants to hang out with me, you can find me at online on my website, ontariobarexamcoach.com. Or if you're looking for the podcast, you can go to offthetrackspodcast.com. And both of those accounts have LinkedIn pages and Instagram pages. And you can find me on Twitter at Tova Parpar, TOVAHPARPAR, which is my Hebrew name, which means good butterfly. And it's something that I've always loved, and I've been called by a lot of people since I was like 4 years old. So I refuse to change it and make it more, quote, professional. So there you go.
Great. Thanks so much again, Piper. And thanks for everyone for tuning in. Wish you all the best. And thanks for everyone again. And take care, everyone.
Awesome.